Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where in the world you're joining us from, and welcome to this session by SolarWinds on the best practices for supporting and securing customers during COVID-19 and the evolving considerations as teams are working from home more and more. Do a little welcome and some general housekeeping. So you will notice that all attendees are on mute. This does not mean that we don't want to hear from you. It just means we want to ensure the best possible audio experience for you guys today. We are running this as an interactive session. In fact, we have some content prepared, but this really is your power hour. So we want to hear from you guys. You can use the questions panel in the GoToWebinar bar and encourage you to ask any and all questions starting now. So if you have burning questions about how to work in this circumstance, in this crisis that's going on, any questions for our group here in our panel today, get them going because we want to drive as much value for you as possible in this session. Thirdly, wash your hands, everybody. Don't touch your face. That's why we're all socially distancing. And before you ask, this session is being recorded today. So I will step forward and introduce the panel. So I am moderating and facilitating today. My name is Colin Knox. I'm the head of community engagement here at SolarWinds MSP. Came from your side of the fence, worked for a number of MSPs before owning and operating my own. Grew that to a $4 million business and exited that as I was founding Passportal. Passportal was acquired last year by SolarWinds, and I found myself in an opportunity for a new role here. I'm joined by the head nerds from SolarWinds MSP today. So we've brought together a team of experts across various topics in the MSP business, and we're very happy to have them all here today at your disposal to answer whatever questions you want across operations, security, backup and protection, and automation. So first we've got Eric Anthony, who had an MSP of his own. He sold it. And Eric a while ago joined the GFI Max team, which eventually was part of the evolution into SolarWinds MSP and evolved into his role as the head operations nerd, where he's a frequent contributor to SolarWinds MSP blog, hosts many of the webinars that we do for the MSP Institute, and does constant engagement with the IT channel community on a daily basis. Also joined by Gil Langston, our head security nerd. He's got a background in SMB and MSP-focused security products, including endpoint antivirus, web protection, patch management, log and event monitoring. Almost you name it, he's been involved with it. So a lot of expertise on security products and security strategies. We are also joined by Eric Harlitz, our head backup nerd. Leader in data protection and disaster recovery, has more than 25 years experience working with and helping MSPs understand and turn backup and business continuity into a competitive growth driver for their businesses. And then Marc-Andre Tanguay, who is our head automation nerd, brings a ton of extensive industry experience, having worked one-on-one with hundreds of MSPs to help create, optimize, and employ some of the strongest automation policies and processes in the industry. So we are going to start with a little bit of a poll here today. Everybody's working from home. So wanted to launch a little poll and see how many of you have animal friends that are watching the presentation today. Dogs, cats, fish. I think we've got a chinchilla this morning, ferrets, a whole bunch of different animals. So let that run a little bit. I know we've got some on our team even joining in today. I'll give a closeout. Oh, we got a lot of none this time. Some empty houses, but still a fair amount of dogs and cats, and a little bit of fish and some other in there. All right, so getting back to the presentation. SolarWinds, we're really about partners and partner success, so we are definitely here to support you guys during this tough time and really unique circumstance that we all find ourselves in. So still here to provide you guys all of the technical support that you need across any of our products. have our customer care teams running and available to help you with any sort of account and account management or account change assistance type stuff. Customer success team is here to help enable and empower you, and obviously our head nerds. If you need to access any of these resources, we have our Customer Success Center, where if you go into the Customer Success Center, you can click the big green Need Assistance button at the top and submit a case or get access to any of the resources that we're talking about here today, and to get going with you. So without further ado, let's jump into some of the content here. Again, if you have questions across anything, please do put them in the question panel. We'll make this as interactive as possible for you. So when we look at work from home scenarios, we're really finding that there's the three options. Somebody's got a company laptop, already prepped, can work remotely, no problem, or they have a home computer and their business has adopted a lot of cloud solutions and applications, so they don't necessarily need to remote into an office, but just get to their cloud and SaaS applications, or they're running a home computer and still need to remote into the office. So to help us drive some of how we're talking about today, we're going to launch another poll about which of these scenarios are you finding are the most popular across your clients right now. Is it they're on a company laptop already prepped for remote? Are they using a home computer? Is that home computer just use cloud applications, or are they needing to remote in? We'll give you guys a few seconds to fill that out. All right, so we're seeing some stuff, and we'll go ahead and kind of close this down now. So what we're seeing is 71% are using a company laptop, which is of the audience today, which is good. They've got remote access already set up. 39% and 71%. So it was a multi-select, a little bit skewed, but looks like we still have a fair amount of people that are using home computers. So we'll talk a lot more about some of the strategies that you can employ around home computer remote access, and things of that nature. So along those lines, let's go ahead and jump in. So Eric, Mr. Anthony, connectivity is a huge point now. We just learned that, most of the people on the call here today are dealing with their clients who are using home computers to remote in, either to their office or cloud applications. So what sort of things should we be looking at connectivity-wise when setting these people up or working with these end users?
Yeah, so thanks, Colin. Obviously the laptop, the corporate laptop, which is already prepared, you already manage it, it already has known security applications on it. Those are in pretty good shape because they're already set up, you've already hardened them, you know what you're dealing with there and don't have to do a lot of work. Now, the problem comes in when you have these home computers. And, we had the two scenarios of where you have a home computer that's just accessing cloud applications. That one's not too difficult. You still want to make sure there's a basic security layer there, and Gil's going to talk about that a little bit more. When it gets really tricky, though, is when they actually need remote access into their computer at the office. And there's a bunch of ways to do that. There's VPN to just gain access to the network. You can do RDP over VPN. Now, again, we're not recommending any of these. We're just saying these are some of the ones that you're going to see out there in the environments. And then, of course, probably the most popular and easy one to set up is some type of remote access software. So they just have a client on their home computer accessing an agent on the computer in the office. The thing that joins all of these things together, though, is the fact that there's now, instead of everything being in the office and being connected to a nice, secure little, network in the office where everything's local, everything's distributed. And instead of going through the one corporate, ISP in the office, everything's going through a whole bunch of ISPs, whatever they have at home. So there's a lot of different things that you're going to have to deal with here. And one of those is diagnosing these connections. So whether you're using Traceroute or whether you're using NetPath, something like that, you're going to want to be cognizant of the tools, and you want to look for those things that you can use in order to make sure these connections are good enough to work from.
Right, that's a very good point. And I think the other thing to consider as people are working from home is is it's not just the end users that are having to get set up to work from home. You've got technicians now who are no longer working side by side in the office together. And so they're not as interconnected to each other to be aware as what's going on. And they're trying to support this disparate workforce now. So, what sort of things should the MSPs be doing to ensure that their technicians are prepared and have the right resources and tools to support such a disparate client workforce?
Well, one of the things that's obviously going to happen here is they're going to have a lot of users at home on home computers that don't have, a remote management agent on them. So they're going to need some type of good remote control software to handle those types of help desk tickets. And that's one of the things we want. That's why we're giving away the Take Control license. And because it's very easy for them to set up ad hoc sessions and even leave up to it's 500 devices per technician agent that they can actually leave on those devices to do attended or unattended remote control for help desk tickets.
That's right. So, like Eric just said, everybody, we understand that these are trying times, that you guys are needing to find ways to have collaborative remote access to a bunch of new home computers, for ways for your clients who are using their home computers needing to remote into their office computer. So SolarWinds has come forward and offered you guys our remote control product, Take Control Plus, completely free for 90 days. So the link's up on the slide here. We'll also paste that into the chat so that you guys all have access to it. But really quick, easy access for free for remote access for both your technicians and your customers. For those who are interested in digging in deeper on Take Control and how to use it, both either for your customers or your technicians, we will have Eric come back on a little bit later in the presentation here and do a quick product demo for you guys so that you can see that, understand it, and really get going with it. Again, no sales pitch, no nothing. This is completely free for you guys, part of us trying to help the community. All right, so when we're looking at supporting users from home, Eric covered a bunch of great content here. Is there anything else you wanted to add in, Eric?
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, obviously security should be your number one concern. The problem when we get into these home computer situations, there's a little bit of an issue here when it comes to security and privacy, because the home computer may already have something on it. First of all, it may already be compromised. It may already have malware on it. So we're going to have to deal with that. But they may also have, even if it's not compromised, they may have an existing AV software. So if you're trying to decide whether or not you are going to put a remote management agent onto that home computer, you kind of have to decide, are you going to displace, and is that going to cause a problem? Also, are there going to be any privacy concerns? Because that's an issue as well. One of the things that we're going to talk about a little bit later in automation is creating a work-only user for that PC, so that when they're logging in to do work, they're not using the same user that they're using when they go on to play games, or that the kids are using to go on to play games. And then, of course, we don't know what these computers are in terms of age, operating system, or performance. So there may be additional challenges when it comes to that as well.
Absolutely. No, great feedback. One other thing that I'd like to bring up is how critical and key communication is at this point. When we're in a circumstance like this, clients can become very demanding, as I'm sure you guys have all experienced. And so it's very clear and key to be setting proper expectations with your clients in this time. It's such a rapidly changing situation. They have a lot of needs. There's a level of stress and burden on your organization. So to be able to communicate what you guys are doing to keep running, what process you guys are following to handle situations, reset expectations on SLAs. This is a unique circumstance, and so communicating to your clients and let them know what's going on is super important. The same thing is communicating down to your team. Let them know what you guys are doing. Let them know what the company's plan is, how you're going to react to this. Let them know that you're there to support them. this is one of those chances where you really have the opportunity to band the entire team together to trudge through this as a team, and isn't a situation where you as the leaders need to take the full burden on you. So continue to communicate and talk openly with your clients, and be even communicating some of what we're talking about here today to your clients, so that they can understand what risks they should be looking out for and some of the things they should be considering. With that, and with going into risks, let's jump to Gil. I mean, security is such a hot topic here. It's always a hot topic. Now more than ever, we've got the disparate deployment of all these users. They're using workstations that weren't previously under management by the MSPs, aren't behind commercial UTM appliances. You know, to get you to walk us through some of these vectors and attack vectors that we need to be watching, and the type of layered security approach that MSP should be following here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And if you don't mind giving me control for a second, I'll click through a few of these. But, you know, there are a lot of really good points that Colin was making there. And there are a few of them, I think, that I want to drill into a little bit. Now, you know, with a situation like this, of course, there have been the move to work from home. But, you know, the reason for all of this is because there's a lot of concern out in the environment about what's going on. You know, people are people. I always say humans are humans and they do human things. And one of those things is they want information. So unfortunately, there are a lot of bad actors that are taking advantage of that right now in the environment. So they're upping their game when it comes to the type of spam, phishing. They're kind of targeting this situation, the COVID-19 concerns. So there was a blog post I did last week about this, where we're starting to see a lot more of those, you know, person infected in your area, new guidance from the World Health Organization, or even information about working from home looking like it's coming from the business. Either way, people are hungry for information. They're going to be tempted to click on things. And unfortunately, when we couple that with the fact that users tend to behave a little differently at home than they do at work, right? They come into work. This is someone else's environment. It's someone else's systems. They're gonna kind of act accordingly. When they're at home, people tend to relax a little bit more. They want to surf a few things on the web, things like that. So they do tend to click on more things. And on top of that, as Colin said, these are different environments. They're not behind some of the other protections that you may have in place. So in a way, you know, I would recommend that you consider a lot of these environments you're now supporting the end users in as a little bit of a hostile environment. You're not quite sure what you're walking into. You don't know their security stance or their security posture. You know, one of the examples I give, and this is across the board for all your home users, one of the things that you'll probably want to do in working with the business owner and communicating with the end users is make sure that on their Wi-Fi that they absolutely do have, you know, a password configuring using WPA2. Some people may not even be aware that they need to be doing that because, you know, they're not security people. So make sure that those, you know, high level things are definitely in place. And if you can use a VPN, you should, but there's a few conversations we'll have about that. So now, you know, this diagram, a lot of you are probably familiar with it if you've been in any of my boot camps or some of my office hours. But the idea here is these are all the areas we have to protect from attack. I don't care if it's in the office, if you're dealing with cloud applications, and if you're dealing with a remote user. Either way, these are all the areas that need to be protected. So I want to walk through like one kill chain or one attack path so we can talk about all those different layers. And then we'll talk about what really should be considered at least a bare minimum you should be doing on these end users' networks or systems, or at least working with them to make sure are done, and depending on that level of whether or not you're installing an agent or simply supporting them remotely. So in a lot of situations, like we talked about, it always starts with an email. And in this environment, you're going to be seeing a lot of those emails, spam emails getting through that have information that make people want to click, check an attachment, or link to a document where they're going to supply their credentials. But either way, that email comes in, and then you have a person, and we're going to drill in on that person layer quite a bit here. They're going to click on something. They're going to invite the malware in, right? And then from there, in this particular kill chain, PowerShell gets called. PowerShell goes out on the internet, back out on the internet to download another payload, the first payload. And in the Ryuk ransomware case, it's Emotet. Well, Emotet's job is to collect as much information on that endpoint as possible to report back to command and control and say, here is the environment I'm installed in. And then it also figures out a way to persist on the device itself. Now, once that persistence is established, they reach out again and download a second stage. In this case, they're actually doing TrickBot. TrickBot then runs on that endpoint. Now, its job, unfortunately, is to then do things like try to find any passwords, username or passwords or account information that it can, as well as examine the environment to see what else is in the environment for it to spread to. And that's that spread within the network. On top of that, in this particular case, they then make a decision. Hey, let's download Ryuk and encrypt the data. But it could be as simple as, instead of doing that, exfiltrating data, gathering information so that it can do a follow-on attack. So, when all of this is inside your network and you have some of those basic security controls in place, you got a good handle on it. But now you're a little bit more blind to some of those situations, which means making sure, as you saw in that attack, it's covering multiple layers. It's touching almost every layer in this example. So making sure these remote environments are secure is super important in this situation. Now, I'm going to go ahead and show you kind of, this is generally what you would be deploying within an environment to make sure it's protected. Some of these are network specific to the small to medium businesses, four-wall network. But a lot of these are definitely need to be focused on equally within a customer's environment or an end user's environment. For example, the endpoint protection, making sure that the patches are up to date, that the system is patched so that those vulnerabilities cannot be exploited, making sure that the users understand those risks, which are certainly heightened in this situation, but also using complex passwords and protecting them, using a password manager so that they don't have to remember all the passwords and they're more willing to use complex passwords and they're not writing them down. And then, of course, this goes across the board, whether you're dealing with cloud applications only or a VPN. Make sure that you're putting that two-factor on everything. If you haven't done it up till now, it's really important to do that now because of these different disparate environments that you are supporting. But at the same time, making sure that their firewall is in place and running. But then also that mail protection, malicious URL filtering are two things that you can implement. Even if that's DNS filtering, if it's endpoint URL filtering on that endpoint, making sure that they're not just going to known bad websites, you're blocking that access are all things that are really important in the remote user environment. And of course, as we'll talk in a minute with Eric about backup, making sure that if they are working on documents at home, that those are backed up as well. So he's definitely going to talk us through that here in just a moment. But going back to that kind of core things that need to be addressed with the home computers, password management, right? Making sure, like we said, that they're able to store those passwords and access securely all of the resources they need to. Some sort of endpoint protection. Now there's two situations, as Eric mentioned. One of those could be that they already have antivirus, where you're going to want to monitor and make sure it's up to date and running. Or if you're actually putting a monitoring agent on using your own antivirus, that you're getting that set up and running. Making sure that they're patched. If you're using your own agent, then yes, you can go ahead and patch that system if you have permission, or work with the end user to make sure that they get up to some level of current with those patches while they're working at home. That malicious URL filtering to block any clicks. If they do mess up and they click on one of these phishing links, then you can block that access. And then we'll move into the backup section. But one last point I want to make is that it is really important that the users understand that there is a heightened level of risk. And one of the ways that you can help as a service provider is to communicate often, let them know some of these risks that are out there, and even supply them with some legitimate sites that are vetted, that they can go to get information. Because let's face it, they're at home, they're going to want to get that information. So let's definitely make sure that you're supplying them with some of that information, and that's a value-add service that you can give to your customers. But also, at any time, you're going to get requests to do things that you normally don't do that might cut corners on the security side, such as exposing remote desktop to the internet or port forwarding. I would advise that you slow down for a minute and make sure that your customers understand the risk. And sometimes taking that extra time to create an alternative method other than what is most simple is really advised. And I think that's where the Take Control Plus is really going to help out. I know in a few minutes, Eric's going to walk us through that, but setting your users up to securely access any resources back in the network versus just doing something like opening up RDP on the internet. Those are really things that are going to help you stay secure and honestly, in long term, going to let you offer better service to your customers. So, I know if you guys have any questions, please feel free to type those in and we'll answer those. But those are the core things.
Oh, that's awesome, Gil. So we did have a couple questions have come in. One of the questions was, how do you treat that? Like, how would you approach and treat this fact that these remote users, they're now working behind a home router? What do they? Obviously, we can't go out and deploy a bunch of commercial grade appliances out to every client or every home, but how should you treat that home router? Should they be trying to gain access to check configurations of it? Should they implement other technology stack, or what should they look at there?
That's a great question. So, I would argue that one of the first things that as you're helping any of these end users get set up in their environment is talk to them about that. That's obviously has to be a negotiation and a discussion. You're going into environments you don't own, right? But at least giving them maybe a quick tutorial on how to set up a password on their router, or assisting them when need be to access that router. That's really a question you have to answer with the business owner. Obviously, you can't deploy the weapons grade stuff that you're using in the environment, but that's kind of why we say these are the critical elements. Maybe it would make sense to get that business owner along with the end users to agree during this time. Maybe we are going to install a monitoring agent so that we can then get it patched. We can install our antivirus so that we can monitor it, but then document those changes so that you know that you can roll them back later. Make sure they're all documented well somewhere so that you can get back to that normal state after this is over. But it's really about conversations and explaining exactly these needs to the business owner and those end users that will need to buy into this as well. Understanding the why it's so important is the first step. So have that conversation and then make a decision with each business owner exactly how far, how deep your fingers are going to go into supporting them. But either way, make sure that they understand that these things have to happen to operate in a secure environment and protect the data.
Awesome. And so we had another question come in. We've been talking security. We talked about the free licensing offer of our Take Control tool. We had a question come in about what is the security that's embedded in Take Control Plus? And so I know a few of the things come into 2FA or multi-factor authentication access. Overall, it's GDPR compliant and ready. It leverages world-class cryptography standards like FIPS. It's got automatic clipboard deletion, idle session timeout controls, things like that, to just make sure that the connections are secure when connecting in remotely and using that tool. All right, so Gil, thank you very much for that. You kind of ended up with this slide talking backup and leveraging backup to secure them. We're joined with Mr. Harless, our other Eric on the line. So if you hear us say Eric a lot of times, there is two of them. And so Eric, Mr. Harless, I think, backup is a consideration. People are working outside of the office. There's latency at times on the internet connections. There's even some systems have been having some, outages or reduced performance with this added load. So there's a good chance a lot of people are working on documents locally that they're downloading to these machines and working on them. So what sort of things should MSPs be talking to their clients about from a data protection or a backup standards position?
Well, sure. So the number one thing is that if you're using a work computer or work laptop that you've brought from your office, you're probably still fine. It should continue to do your backup operations and go up to the cloud just as if the system were in the office. It's when you're dealing with a home system where it's your personal machine, you've downloaded those files and now you've made changes that you need to ensure you've got some form of protection. Ideally, we'd love you to back up the entire system, but there's privacy concerns as Eric Anthony mentioned. So maybe you don't want to collect all that data. We talked about creating unique users and securing that user with a password so that your 6-year-old doesn't come in and delete your work PowerPoint because he just wants to play Minecraft or game of the week. So those kind of things. So it is definitely beneficial to have backup copies of what you're working on, ensuring they're synchronizing up to the cloud at a regular point. Can you get by with something like a Google Drive or a OneDrive or something like that? Possibly, but it's really not true backup. So there are ways to go out and ensure that you've got a cloud-based solution. You want to make sure that you've got at least file level protection if you can't opt for a full system. That way you can at least keep your bandwidth utilization down by just getting the key directories or user profiles, user folders that you want. Other things you can think about here, if you need to get data from a system that is backed up in the office, well, there's a lot of recovery options. You could recover that system as a virtual machine and run it as a VM, recover data from a network share, from an application back to a local system, compressed, deduped, and get a very small footprint to get the data back. So not only a backup scenario, but a recovery scenario should you need to work on something you don't have direct access to. Then there's the case of you're using a home computer for synchronization or productivity tools. So you're using Office 365 and you're just using your OneDrive files. Well, if you're using a backup solution on premise in your office that's protecting Office 365, then that's going to make sure that your documents are protected and your email is protected. And that would carry over no matter where you're using and downloading those items. You wouldn't have to worry about them not getting backed up as part of the normal scenario.
Yeah, it's just in some of those cases where they're using a home computer, it's shared amongst the family. Somebody accidentally leaves Office 365 OneDrive open and a kid comes in and doesn't know what it is, accidentally hits a few buttons and purges that. It's a higher risk and a higher footprint of access that's going on right now to those cloud services and file sync systems. So what can they do about that?
Just like we say in the office, if you step away from your keyboard, please lock it. You don't know if the cat's going to be walking across it or the kid's going to be accessing it. Having those cloud-to-cloud-based backup solutions, like SolarWinds Backup for Office 365, will ensure you've got protection at the cloud level. So that way it doesn't have to upload data from the local computer. It's going to happen in the cloud from Office 365 servers to our servers. Other things, be aware that Office 365 does have undelete capabilities in there for at least a short period of time. So if you act quickly, you realize things have been deleted, you can likely undelete those without having to go to the backup tapes. But they're there as that last line of defense. Also be very, very careful. The ransomware guys are not taking the time off. They're working from home as well. And before you go enter your credentials for logging into your mail server or other cloud productivity applications, make sure that you trust where you're at and you've confirmed what you're logging into. If you do hand those credentials off, then you've given them access to your data, to your mail, to your OneDrive, and so on.
That's great. And we did have a question come in, Eric. Kristen was curious, with the backup documents that we have, is there a way to back up just a single user profile, or is it kind of an all or nothing?
So documents is an all or nothing. So it's going to get all of the 99 plus file types across the entire machine. So you don't have to specify where it's at. So you're not going to accidentally ignore or forget something. Now you might say, well, I don't want to keep all that data for a long period of time. Documents is really nice in the sense that it is just a 28-day calendar-based retention. So it's going to roll over at the end of 28 days, constantly ensuring it's protecting what's there. So once you do discontinue that or stop using it, these are temporary backups you need to do, obviously, then that data will age out and be purged out of the system. So it's not being retained for long-term archiving.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. All right, so let's jump in with Mark, Andre. So we've talked about so many different things to consider. All of these tools and solutions to deploy out to help out with the security and successful remote connecting, all the configurations that surround them. But we're not doing this one by one of a few people moving to work from home. It's this mass movement. Surely there's a way that we can be leveraging automation in this to help scale things and lessen and reduce the burden on the technicians.
Absolutely. So, so basically, automation is going to be the key as you guys roll out more and more and go more wide scale. Deploying VPN obviously is a very simple thing. Another thing that we've done in recent trainings, we just finished around the boot camps this week, and we show people how to prepare new computers. So we help them create a local admin account. You can do a local non-admin for a work-only user like we have on the list. You can do we built a desktop maintenance that we published in the cookbook. So you can run this policy from your RMM. So if you deploy an agent, you can basically run a policy to, disable auto run, enable smart screen, disable hibernation so that they don't go to sleep all the time. Like all kind of little things to tweak the OS to make it more workable, more like a work computer and more reliable for the end user. As the customer will come to use, like, well, all my users need Adobe Reader, they'll need these 5 programs installed. You can run this through policies we have pre-built for you and available in a matter of minutes. The only hurdle is to send the user a link. It's like, here's an installer, please run this, do next, and then you get in full control, and then you can run this, right? So one thing that I said this morning, and I've already had a few people reach out, so we're going to be publishing more automation based on this, but one thing I told people is if you have things, you know what, I would like to automate these 5 things to help my work from home computers, send me an email directly. I'll put my email in the chat. Send me an email saying, hey, I like these things done. Can you help? And I can look into them for you. I can help build it, and then we can share it back with your community through our Twitter, through our automation cookbook, and everything else we have at our disposal to help you guys out. So automation is going to be very, very key as you go into that and have a lot of people to deal with.
That's awesome. And I know we've got a bunch of these scripts already done up, either through Automation Manager or PowerShell. So it's really awesome that we're able to offer these out. If you guys are looking for scripts, you need some help getting this stuff done, please do reach out to Marc-Andre. His email's in the chat there, or add it in the questions panel, and we'll make sure to get those things off to him so that he can share all those scripts to you guys to eliminate your need to spend time working on that. Mark, is there anything that they can automate to help the end user as well? So obviously, if you're working from a home computer, there's a few extra steps that they have to go through with connecting every morning, and instead of getting those calls because they forgot to go through a step, is there certain startup or launch automation that they can put in place for them?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a mix of a few things. You want to create shortcuts to their local applications, their cloud financial system like a NetSuite. You want to do shortcut to their Office 365, to their Gmail, whatever they're using. You can do all that through automation. You can install the app for their local VPN that they use and make a shortcut for this. You can do a variety of things like this for automation. And like I said, if you lack the knowledge or the time or the will to build it yourself, just reach out to us. We can look into it to help you out. This is something that we're trying to do in those difficult times and say, you know what, if we can build it for one person and reuse for 1,000, why not? So this is something that I can look at for you guys as we go along.
That is awesome. And just a reminder to everybody, we did pop the Twitter handles of all of our head nerds in the chat. Follow them on Twitter. There's constant advice flowing out from these guys. They're posting out when they do things like office hours, which is an opportunity for MSPs to call in or connect in and connect with these guys, ask questions, get help, and really help move their businesses forward. Thanks very much for all of your time on this stuff, guys. If you have more questions, I think we've had a lot of the questions that have come up. One thing that we've started to hear internally from a number of our partners is, how to have that conversation about re-articulating and re-justifying the costs of your MSP offering and services to your clients now that there's been a fundamental change in how they're working and how they're leveraging IT. Understand that clients are contacting MSPs to say, hey, can we move to hourly only and kind of move away from the managed service while people are working from home. And so we wanted to have a little bit of an open conversation on our panel here about some suggestions on how to position and reposition in some cases what all that value is that these MSPs are delivering to their clients to help mitigate any risk of revenue on the MSP side and really substantiate that value message. So, Eric Anthony, let's start with you. We haven't heard from you in a little bit.
All right. So this is a tough conversation, right? And I know from my own experience, being a tech guy, a lot of times we don't like to talk about money and we don't like to talk about bad business stuff, but it is really important for you guys to get out in front of this. In my opinion, I think just sitting customers down, having a frank conversation, showing them the value of what you're delivering, in addition to the normal. Obviously we are in a situation that is not normal right now. And so there are even more values that you can give to them now in terms of helping them get their users set up remotely, helping them get set up. Like the example I used this morning was not only IT and technically related stuff, but also helping like restaurants get set up with DoorDash and Uber Eats, things like that that are actually going to help their business get through this time. I heard it equated in some of the forums as MSPs are first responders for these businesses, and MSPs, because of not only their technical knowledge but also their business knowledge, could actually mean the difference between a small to medium-sized business surviving or not through this scenario.
Yeah, it's definitely some great feedback. I mean, this is one of those opportunities where we need to be, as MSPs, frequent and top of mind with our customers and our clients so that they do readily see all these things that you're doing for them. So even continuing to communicate that, hey, even though you're out working from home, we're still taking care of all these things on your office network. We're still making sure we're administering and doing all the maintenance required on your cloud workloads. Doing the access right checks on a regular basis on your SaaS application, things like that. Gail, did you have anything else that you wanted to add into the conversation?
I touched on it a little bit earlier, but the bottom line here is, we know that all of your customers and clients are kind of in a hurry, let's hurry up and get this done mode. And we want to make sure that we tell all of you guys, hey, stop and take a breath and relax. We know that you got a lot of stress on you right now, but if you're doing things like having to go visit either an end user's home or customer site, take some time and make sure that you're doing safe practices to protect your own well-being and your own health. Talk to that customer and make sure that they understand that these things are going to get done. We need to make sure that we're doing them securely. We need to make sure we're doing them safely. And all of our goal is to keep you in business and make sure that you can operate that business, but just work with us. So, just take a breath and take a beat each time those people reach out to you and are kind of in that stress level to make sure that you're looking out for your own well-being and health as well.
Well stated. I mean, this is the perfect time to act as a business partner to your clients. Show them and help them understand that you guys are in this together. And in some cases, be open to work with it. I mean, I ran my MSP through the last recession as well, and know that, we had to go and do some discounting or some temporary reduction in contract fees and stuff. And that wasn't easy to do, but part of that, making some of those concessions and compromises with your clients, if you have to, are the ways that you forge those ongoing long-term relationships for when the times are good as well. Eric, Carlos, Marc-Andre, anything to add for suggestions here?
On my side, I was just gonna say, and just reiterate what everybody else is saying here. Don't rush things. Don't cut security corners. Don't take risks with the backup data, with the production data. It could be the difference between the company staying successful or going out of business. This is not the time that anybody wants to be dealing with a ransomware or data being held hostage or data being deleted.
From my side, the only thing I'd say is standardization. Standardization is the key. The more you can reliably provide service, even though they're working in difficult environments, the better it is. So the more you can leverage automation, obviously, the better you'll be. But the more you can reliably document and build around what you do, the better you'll be, definitely.
Awesome. Thank you very much, guys. So we will be keeping the session open. We are open for Q&A. As questions come in, I will definitely pose those to the team here in the panel to give some answers. In the meantime, Eric, Anthony, did you want me to pop things over to you for a little bit of a demo on how these MSPs can be leveraging Take Control on kind of both use cases as a technician or from their customers connecting in remotely?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, there's 2 scenarios that we want to run them through. So yeah, if you'll go ahead and hand me presenter.
Here you go.
Let me make sure I got the right screen here. All right. So as we talked about in the beginning of the call, we are giving that 1 technician license for free that you can use. It's really, for the next 90 days, and hopefully that's as long as this whole thing really lasts. Who knows? But in terms of, these 2 scenarios, we want to run one, the adding an end user so that they can access their own computer at the office. So from their home computer. So we talked about that as one of the scenarios. In fact, that was one, 71% of you say you're running up against that type of connection that you're having to provide for customers. And so we're going to run through that scenario. And then the other scenario that we're going to run through, because this is the other thing that you're going to have to deal with a lot, is those ad hoc remote help desk connections to the home computers that they're trying to not only access from home, but also trying to access their cloud applications. You may be doing help desk tickets for things that are not related to connecting to the work PC. It may just be, they're having trouble printing, or they're having trouble sending an email or whatever. So there's a lot of those types of things that are going to happen. So what I want to do is walk you through those. Now, what I did today is I went ahead and signed up for a brand new trial. So this is my brand new trial. I don't have really much set up in here except for that first end user and that first device. But here's the steps that you're going to want to follow once you've logged into the Take Control interface. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to add their device. Now, I'm going to assume that you have an RMM or an N-Central agent on their device in the office when you're doing this first step. Because what we're going to do, because this is going to be for managed customers that you already have access to. If you don't, then you're going to need access to that work computer somehow. But anyway, what you're going to do is you're going to come into devices, you're going to click on add device, you're going to give it a name. It doesn't really matter, what it is. I'm going to just say test device 27. And then all of this stuff is optional. I would recommend that you create groups to divide these up into by client, just so it makes it easier for you to manage. So I'll just choose A1 Demo Corp and then click Save. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this www.startcontrol.com and the pin code, or I can just take this URL. Okay, so I can copy and paste this URL. I'm going to go into either my RMM dashboard or my N-Central dashboard, and then I'm going to remote into this device and go ahead and go to that URL and either put the pin code in, or if I use the direct URL, it doesn't matter. Then go ahead and install that agent. It walks you through. I'm not going to walk you guys through how to install software. You know how to do that. But once you do that and come back, now you're going to have that device listed in Take Control. Now, at this point, you could do an unattended session. Now, of course, you don't really need to do that because you already have your remote management tool to get to that device. What we want to do is we want to give that end user access to this device. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go to management, and give me just a second here. So I'll go to management, and then you're going to go to technician. So it's right over here on the left-hand side. It's running a little bit slow today just because so many people are using it. All right, so now I have my technician screen up, and I've already created one client, but I'm going to walk you through creating another one. So you'll just hit add. It's pretty self-explanatory. Mary user, Mary at a1democorp.com. Now here's the part you need to make sure you do, and that is you need to check the configure as user. That's the most important thing here, to make sure that you're configuring them as an end user. Now also you'll want to take note, and you'll want to give them this URL, the enduser.swi-tc.com, because that's the URL that they're going to want to use to get to it. Now of course they'll get that in their invitation email. So I'm going to click save, and then I'll click send.
Hey, Eric, as you're doing that, we did have a question come in asking if there's a way to mass deploy take control to all computers that's part of a site via RMM.
Not directly through Take Control Plus. There may be a way to automate that, because you can download a URL for the standalone agent, and so there may be a way that Mark and I could work out a way to deploy that. We'd have to put a little more
Awesome.
brain power behind it, but yeah, probably. And I think I saw a question in there. There was something else related to that as well. Forget what, okay, I'm not seeing it right now, but maybe we'll get back to it. But anyway, so
Sure.
now
Yep.
you've sent the invitation. They're going to get the invitation. That's going to give them all the instructions that they're going to need to log in and be able to get into the end user portion of Take Control. And what they're going to see, well, actually, there's one more step, because we've created the user. Now we need to give that user access to a device. So what we would do is stay clicked on that user, go to computers, and then you'll have a list of computers here. Obviously, I still only have one. I'm just going to check that box, and it's going to give them access to that device. Okay, so that when they log in, basically what they're going to see, this. Now, obviously, this is a greatly simplified interface, which is great for an end user. That's why there's a difference for an end user login versus an admin login. And then all they simply do is come over here and click on the remote access button, and it's going to connect them to their computer. Now, one of the other things that we came up with here is you may want to create some client users that have access to more than one machine. If you have a business owner who wants access to all of the work computers at the office, if you have an internal IT resource that you may want to give them this tool for, those are some other use cases. And for those, they would just have more computers listed here than the single end user accessing their individual workstation at the office. Okay, so that's pretty simple, easy to do. The next thing we're going to do, I'll go back to the dashboard. The next scenario that we wanted to talk about was, with all these home users out there, what are you going to do for ad hoc connections? So that's where we come into sessions, and then we just simply create a session, record what the customer name is so that we have access to that later in the reporting, create session, and then it gives us our PIN number again. So all we do is we go to that workstation, we go to startcontrol.com, and then I don't remember the PIN number, so let me go back there for a second. 843178. Put that in there. Like with any other remote service, it downloads something, you tell them to click on it. And then going back to the security, questions that we had before, they get this warning, so they know it's from you. all of that stuff. It'll have your name, your email address. You click OK. It generates a support request. And then we can jump back into our dashboard. And do a quick refresh here. And there we go. So now we have that. And then we simply click on the remote start session. And there we go. So it's as simple as that. And I'm using this on a Mac. So on a Windows machine, it would be similar, probably even a little bit easier. But this also shows you that you can use this if your technicians have Macs. It's not a problem at all.
And we've recently done some releases also to improve the stability of the connectivity for Take Control on Macs as well. I know somebody popped a question up in the panel here about that. But that is something that has been solved and fixed.
Yes, and this supports both Windows and Mac as being the agents on the other side. So it's not just.
So I'd like to make a comment.
Did you just say that PC is better as well?
I did not say that PC was better.
That's what I heard.
As you guys can imagine, there's a little bit of a rivalry between Mac and Windows between the nerds here.
Yeah.
Hey, I would like to make one comment.
No debate on platforms right now. So we are getting near the end of the session here and end of time. Somebody did ask. You can create numerous trials for either each technician. You could create trials for each client. We're not limiting the trials right now. We just want to make sure that all of our partners have access to the tool to use in the way that they best see fit. And our team is here to help with that. So,
yeah, and that's a really good point, Colin. I was talking to David Weeks earlier today, and this does require a little bit of a mind shift and a process shift as the technicians and the employees are working more remotely. Getting these Take Control tools in place and being able to, document your process is going to be really important around making sure that everything is working efficiently. And you also mentioned something earlier today that I wanted to bring up. You talked about documentation. Of course, if you're an MSP that has everything documented right now, obviously you're in better shape because you've got everything in this distributed environment. It's making it much easier for your technicians to work. But there's another thing you need to think of that you brought up today, Colin, and that was the change management. You are rolling out and making a lot of changes to allow these people to work from home, and you need to document all that so that when it comes time for everybody to go back to normal, they can roll all these changes back because it's going to be really important to do that.
Absolutely. Change tracking is going to be so critical in this. So thanks for bringing that part up again. Definitely
your idea.
I forgot to mention this time around. But okay, well, if there's no other questions, we do thank everybody for their time today. We're very grateful. We wish you the best of luck. We are hosting these webinars more times next week. We've got 2 sessions on Tuesday, 2 on Thursday. If you just want to come and ask a bunch of questions that have come up over the weekend or what have you, we are here to answer your questions. We're here to help you guys. And thank you very much for attending, and we wish you guys the best weekend possible.